Recently, Mr. Henry Cavill was giving an interview to promote his new show, The Witcher. But of course, the interviewers are asking him questions about Superman, because his status as Superman and the status of Superman in period in DC movies going forward is up in the air. And in this video, I'm going to go over a couple of his responses. He was talking to one guy who goes by the name of Jake Hamilton. He was answering his responses on YouTube, and I'm not going to put the YouTube video in this video because if I put someone else's video in my video without their permission, I can get in trouble. So I retyped the responses. And what he asked him, one of the things he asked him was, if Henry Cavill could do more with Superman, how would he like to do the character? What more would he like to do with Superman? Henry's response talked about following up with Superman after the events of Man of Steel. And spoilers if you haven't seen Man of Steel. At the end of Man of Steel, the big climax fight, Superman had to kill General Zod to save the Earth. He snapped his neck, right? General Zod was the last Kryptonian, the last other Kryptonian Superman knew, so he had to unfortunately kill one of his own kind to save the Earth. And Henry wants to pick right up after that left off. And here's what he said. Where we left off with Man of Steel, which was a guy who had found his place, or tried to find his place, but had sort of found it by the end, had committed something which he would consider a most horrific sin by killing the last member of his species, the last Kryptonian, the only other last Kryptonian Superman knew of. That is a place where I'd like to travel from with the character, him exploring the positivity of who he is, not necessarily the chocolate box version, I don't know what chocolate box version means, but leaning into that character who actually becomes an icon of hope and enjoying that experience rather than necessarily being made uncomfortable by it. That last sentence is important because I think he talks about positivity and wanting Superman, I think, to be more like what we expect from the classical version of Superman. You know, more confident, not necessarily so burdened by the weight of being Superman, but able to handle it a bit more. The more confident, experienced Superman who isn't so, I guess, brooding so much. A lot of people like the version of Superman we got in Man of Steel and BVS, and Zack Snyder was trying to be more realistic, like what Superman would really be like, his experience in the world. But in the process, a lot of people found that Superman a bit more brooding, depressed, morose, and dark, and they want the more classical, you know, brighter, shinier Superman, so to speak, which I think is what Superman is, which is what Henry Cavill was alluding to in this quote. Superman being able to bounce back from that horrible experience in Man of Steel to being brighter and more confident. And of course, a big question another interviewer asked him by the name of Kevin McCarthy was, what about all this Snyder Cut talk? One of the things that he asked him was, how did Henry feel about people being vocal about the Snyder Cut, and would Henry want to see the Snyder Cut? And I think he asked him if he'd seen it. Here's what Henry said. I have not seen any Snyder Cuts. I don't know if there's anything that exists that is a Snyder Cut. I'm sure there's footage out there which has probably been pieced together over the years. I'm always interested to see how that stuff turns out. But that is very much a chapter in my past. I would rather talk about what is going to happen in the future, which I went over a bit earlier in this video. The future of Superman, how I can express that character from the comic books, which ties in nicely to Man of Steel. Man of Steel, I really like that movie, and I'd like to be able to tell the story where it was left at that point. Now, he got some hate online from some people who thought he was throwing Zack Snyder under the bus, or saying that he was against the Snyder Cut or that kind of stuff. And I think they're reading a bit more into this. Now, I don't know privately how Henry Cavill feels about the Snyder Cut, but I don't think from this quote he's saying that, like, you know, he doesn't want it released or he's against it. I think he was trying to choose his words carefully here because I think he's still campaigning to try to be Superman. So he's trying to just talk more about the future than the past. That's why he pivots more to Man of Steel 2 or where he'd like to take the character. He wants to show, and I think he's trying to, like, kind of backdoor pitch where he likes Warner Brothers to take the character. More of the traditional kinds of classical Superman, which was different than how he probably is in the Snyder Cut, right? Because the Snyder Cut was the original version of Justice League, which is more in line with the Superman Zack Snyder's already given us, which is what Henry Cavill wants to get away from. Now, I don't know that Henry Cavill is saying that the Snyder Cut isn't any good. I think it's just, you know, a version and a chapter of Superman that he doesn't want to himself, Henry, to do anymore. He wants to pivot in a different direction. And I think that's his prerogative, right? I do think, though, ironically, that if the Snyder Cut is put on HBO Max and people like it, that might help his case, right? Because he's Superman in that movie. And people have wanted to see Henry Cavill play Superman again for a long time. The Snyder Cut would finally give them that. But it would maybe be a version of Superman Henry doesn't want to play anymore. Still, though, it would be Henry Cavill back as Superman, which is what he and a lot of people want. So very interesting. I mean, I think I know, and a lot of people know how Henry would like to play Superman, but, will he get to play Superman that way again? He did it a little bit in the theatrical cut of Justice League. That was the only part of the theatrical cut of Justice League a lot of people actually liked. They hated the movie, but they liked the way Superman was portrayed, except for the mustache. But, yeah, very interesting. I think there's a lot of stuff here. Elsewhere in the interview, he talks about how he thinks that his character, Geralt of Rivia in The Witcher, is a combination of Superman and Batman. He's an outcast with powers, but he's also a really good fighter. And, on the exterior, he has like a gruff personality, like, Batman, very off-putting. But inside, he has Superman's heart. Very interesting. I'm excited for The Witcher. And I'm excited to hopefully see Superman again. Preferably by Henry Cavill, being played by Henry Cavill again. But if they cast somebody else, I'll take that too, because we need our Superman. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube and subscribe to the channel because I appreciate your viewership, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.